All righty, and we are live. So, hi Facebook. My name is Kate Driscoll. I'm the Public Programs Manager for the Hudgens Center for Art and Learning. And today I get to talk to Kourtney Stone. Thank you, Kourtney.
Hi, Facebook, and hi, Kate. It's such a pleasure to be here to talk with you today.
Thank you, really. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is one of my favorite parts of my job. I just get to talk to neat people. So
Yeah.
will you tell people a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure, yeah. So I am an artist, sculptor, maker, all those words, and educator. And I'm originally from Pennsylvania. And I went to undergraduate at Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. And after that, I started teaching high school art for a while and making art, and then decided that I wanted to dedicate a little more time and focus to my personal artwork, and maybe even level up in the teaching department too. And so, oh, hi. So I came to Atlanta to go to grad school. So I'm finishing up my Master's of Fine Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta.
How are you liking Georgia State and the Atlanta area so far?
I love it. Atlanta's such a cool city. You know, it has all the perks of a big city with, you know, all the cultural things, but the art scene has so many different levels to it. You know, like there's the high museum and you know, those really professional layers, but then there's also so much of like the grassroots and, you know, like artists pop up and so I love that feel and sort of that accessibility. And Georgia State's been amazing. It's been really just an incredible experience. The professors here are so supportive, and the program is really very rigorous. And all the opportunities that I wanted in grad school, like meeting visiting artists and having an incredible cohort of fellow grads to work with, it's been the best experience, everything I hoped for.
So what is your program? Like, what do you do?
Sure. So it's a Master's of Fine Arts in Studio Art with a concentration in ceramics. So I am in the ceramics department.
That sounds like so much fun. So I'm imagining that's a program where you're probably, you know, COVID, you know, notwithstanding, you're probably spending a lot of time at the school in the actual studio.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, that's where I'm at right now. Like you can see behind me, these are works in progress, and over there are crates of like sculptures that I've already made. So I'm at school in my studio right now, and it's fantastic. We have these semi-private studios, and then, you know, so ceramics grads, we're always here, always working. And then all the grads in the other departments are also around too, around campus. So yeah, we're here a lot. Despite COVID, you know, we're all still being safe. When other people are in the studio, we wear masks and things like that. So, you know, we're definitely taking precautions, but it's very nice to have access to all the equipment, like the kilns and things right now.
Was it always like that through the pandemic, or was there a period where you couldn't come in?
So there was a period where they really cut down on access, and actually I ended up spending most of the spring and summer in Pennsylvania with my husband Jonas. So I was working out of our garage up there, and so I know down here eventually, once things started to I don't know if under control is the right way to put it, but like when things normalized a little bit and safety protocol was in place, then I know the studios opened back up a little bit more and the grads were able to be here more.
That's really cool. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like there was the initial sort of first wave where none of us really knew what was happening or what the right thing to do was. So it all really totally shut down.
Yeah.
And then we were like, masks are a good idea.
Right.
Touch each other.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know, being at a school too, we have to be so safety minded too, because we have a wonderful and very busy undergraduate population here too, and so you know, we have to really make sure they're safe too, and of course all the faculty, right? We love them, keep them safe too.
Right, yeah, that's good people.
Mhm.
So other than that initial wave of COVID, how did that affect your program?
How did COVID affect our program? So it's affected mostly the way that we are delivering instruction.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of our classes are on a hybrid model. So that's, and as a graduate student, I'm also teaching. So I was teaching some introductory level, some foundation level courses. And so that definitely took some getting used to. And at the beginning of the semester, I definitely wasn't getting all the studio time I'm used to or would like to have, because there was that adjustment, and you know, learning how to make videos, demonstration videos, and upload them, and things like that. So there was a little bit of a learning curve that affected, um, I know, not just my practice, but a lot of the other grad students.
Mhm.
Um, but outside of that, I think we've been pretty fortunate. Folks in our department have stayed healthy, followed guidelines, and so people are still making work and able to access the equipment that they need. And you know, I think the biggest impact is on our social lives
Sure.
because we're a friendly community here, and we love to socialize. And then there's also all sorts of events that Georgia State does with like visiting artists and show openings and things like that, which we have not been able to do. So that's been missing a little bit. Hopefully it'll come back when it's safe.
It sounds like you guys are adjusting really well, though. From everything you're saying, that all sounds like you said, very safe, but also like you're still getting a great experience out of it.
Yeah, well, and you know, a lot of that has to do with like the faculty here. Our director, Joe Perugino, all the way down through the staff in the office, through you know, Miss Rosa, our security guard. She's here and she's still there to help and open doors or whatever you need done. Through our professors, you know, I felt so cared for. You know, like my professors made it a point to check in and see how I was doing and adjusting, and I know that they did that for everybody. So you know, I think that the all I would give so much credit to the professors, and faculty for the way that they've handled it and made sure everybody had the information they needed.
Yeah, I went to Georgia State and I loved it. I had a great time. I thought everyone, faculty, staff, were just, yeah, two thumbs up. Well, I'm holding my water, so two thumbs.
Yeah, yeah.
But so how did you get into this? Were you artistic as a kid? Did this come later?
Yeah. So I remember wanting to be an artist when I was a kid, but maybe not really understanding what that was. And eventually decided, when I was looking at colleges, I landed on education. So, you know, as a high school senior, I was thinking I wanted to go and be a teacher, and maybe an English teacher, maybe an art teacher. And then I was lucky enough to have a really insightful, caring high school art teacher who said, you know, what are you doing? You should go to an art school, which hadn't, you know, I was like, there's schools just for art? What? And so I found this incredible program at Maryland Institute College of Art where I could earn my BFA and then also earn my MA in teaching. And so it was like the best of both worlds. And I was, you know, and when I went to Micah, I was still very much like, I'm going to be a teacher who makes art. I was like, you know, very much about the education. And it wasn't until my experience at Micah with David East, who he's a ceramics department chair there, who just really kind of opened up number one, he introduced me to the ceramics community, which as a field, I think ceramics people are just very generous and welcoming and open. And so that department was a really comfortable place to be. And then he also had this incredible sort of infectious curiosity that and kind of taught me that art can be anything. He was like, you know, even if it's not clay, if your idea doesn't have to do with clay, still make it, right? Like it was that kind of openness that just drew me in. And I realized like, oh wait, like I actually do love art, and this is a thing that I need to do. Like I need to make things, and I love to think about the world in terms of art and art making. So so I left Micah as an artist hyphen educator.
Well, I feel like make you an amazing teacher for those students though. Like that, I feel like you would get so much out of a teacher like that.
I mean, I hope so. You know, it's hard. I feel like I don't, as a teacher, that's the other thing is like, I don't always know my impact right away, right? But I was also fortunate enough to land at a school where they supported my art making as part of my professional teaching practice. So I was able to use the classroom to make artwork, and they helped me with professional development funding for some opportunities. So it really was I was able to keep my focus on my personal art making work. And I felt like that really helped me, like, I guess, anticipate or better communicate sort of the questions and process that I was hoping my students would go through. Like I wanted them to have an authentic studio experience. And so by keeping that alive for myself, I felt like I was able to kind of keep up with them and what I wanted for them a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like the most impactful teachers I had very much had that at the forefront of they were a teacher, but they were also an artist. And I feel like it made learning so much more engaging for me. So I'm sure your students had a great time. But you're right, there is that delay. It takes you a while to appreciate how much the impact a teacher had on you. And then it takes you even longer to get up the guts to like send them an email to be like, thank you, I thought you were great. You probably don't remember me.
Right? Yeah, like the best teachers are the ones with that contagious sort of enthusiasm for their field, right? But something I learned pretty early on is like teaching is a marathon. It's a long game. You don't always know how it ends.
Do you see yourself being a teacher like throughout your life or in different capacities, or what do you see yourself as far as that goes?
Yeah, I do. I think for me personally, education is just a very important part of our society, and education has done so much for me in so many ways that I really do want to be able to give back to our field that way. Like I think that's a way that I can contribute to the visual arts and ceramics, and kind of keep the conversations and questions going. So yes, so education is important to me. I hope to always be educating in some capacity. I'm pretty open to what that looks like. Ideally, I would leave the MFA program and find a job teaching in a college somewhere. But I really loved teaching high school, and I miss them. I miss those students sometimes, and I've also really loved opportunities to teach workshops and things like that too. So, you know, whatever capacity it comes in, I plan to be educating.
That's awesome. And I think you're right. Education is so important in our society and so undervalued in a lot of ways that it's just, yeah, it's invaluable.
Right. Well, and it's like, you know, it's like right in the name of Hudgens, right? It's the Center for Art and Learning, right? It's all, it's important. So yeah.
Completely. Yeah. The learning part of the Hudgens is definitely, it's one of the most important parts of it. But tell us a little bit about your work. Can we?
Yeah, sure. So I am making figurative assemblage sculptures. And so that means that I'm putting together a lot of different objects and materials and using sort of the figure as the form that I'm putting those things into.
Mhm.
And it's all based on I always start my artwork with a question. And so my questions right now are all about memory and the nature of human memory and really its relationship with perception. Like, how are we taking in information? How are we recording that information and then recollecting it? And what are those processes, you know, like what's actually happening? Yeah.
That is so interesting. The way we record the information, skew it
Right.
over time. And I mean, how many of us have a memory from childhood to where our parent says, that did not happen like that. The dog was not as big as the car.
Exactly, right? Or like you insist that something happened to you, but it actually happened to your sibling, or, you know, or like you have these memories, like, or I have these memories sometimes of like a really specific thing or an object, and that's crystal clear. And then nothing else about that moment. I can't remember anything, like who was in the room. I don't know, but I really remember that apple on grandma's counter.
Mhm.
So it's like sort of those weird little phenomena that happen.
So how do you like to translate that? Translate something that sort of shapeless and formless, something that is so hard for even us to remember. How do you translate that into a physical object?
That's a really good question. And I feel like I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So I don't necessarily have a formula for how things come together, but I do have like feelings and tendencies. So usually when I'm thinking about a person in the memory, I will sculpt them however I remember them out of clay. And so like you can see some of the portraits there behind me. Um, and and then I'll also collect. So I'll sculpt these ceramic portraits, and then I will also collect objects that somehow I am responding to. So they aren't necessarily the exact objects from my memory or my experience, but they're approximations, and I think that's okay because a lot of times memories are just kind of approximations, like they are sort of your guess or your version of what happened.
Mhm.
um, and so I'll start putting them together and trying to see like how these objects and ceramic forms come together to make sometimes it's a body, and sometimes it's like I like to use the bust format a lot, where it's a person like from neck up, and then I use that space underneath to put in objects. And then I'm just kind of trusting that the viewer will join me in the question and in the wondering, um, and start to put together their own associations with the objects and the figure, and kind of build their own narrative for what it is.
So for your work, how do you feel like it's changed over time?
Well, the assemblage work is actually really new for me. That's something I only started doing within like the last 2 years. So I have always been interested in the figure. That's always been an important part for me. And I think a lot of it is that, like for me, when I'm thinking about how I walk through the world, right, it's through this body, and my body affects so much of how I interact with the world. And so the figure becomes an important way for me to communicate, because for me that's like where experience comes from.
Mhm.
And so I've always thought like that, and I started trying to dig into this idea of memory and like what these objects can, like, what types of memories I was having, I guess. And then that kind of led me to the objects. So I was thinking about, how memory is sensory. So, we have very visual memories, but we also, it's like smell can really elicit
Oh
memory,
yeah, for sure.
right? Or like you hear a song and it sends you right back to that place you were when you heard that. And so objects do that for me too. Like I've always kind of grown up feeling like objects do have sort of this power and agency. And, and when you're little, it's like the brave little toaster goes on an adventure when you're away, right? Like, and I don't think that anymore, but I do think that like objects have the power to remind us of things, or to like direct us in certain ways. Like, we all sort of intuitively know how to pick up like a water bottle because it's like shaped in this certain way, or like the objects around us are made to fit our bodies. And so like I think objects have this power, and I thought, hey, like let's just kind of see how these objects fit with my ceramic objects. And it just kind of all started falling into place for me.
That is so interesting. Oh, really, everything you're talking about, like all these concepts of memory, and yeah, this is right up my alley, man. I could talk forever. Um, uh, so are there things, you're in academia, obviously you're really thick into it, and you're active in the art world. Do you ever do any shows or exhibitions?
For
What's
sure.
your stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So even while I was teaching, I was making work and submitting it to shows and everything. And so that's something I've tried to keep up. I would say my exhibition schedule has slowed down a little bit. I don't have quite as much time to apply for shows and things like that in grad school. But I have had some really wonderful opportunities come up. Like over the summer, I was absolutely thrilled to have work at White Space, which is a gallery here in Atlanta, and Swan Coach House Gallery in Atlanta too. And actually, right now, I have a whole bunch of work up at the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They, the curator there, Benjamin Austin, he invited me and a couple other grad students to put some work up. So if you're ever rolling through Concourse E, I have some stuff in a case there.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Are there things through exhibiting work? I'm also interested in artist perspective because I'm on the other side of it. Are there things that you feel like museums or galleries could be better about when they're working with artists, or are there areas where you feel like there are sort of disconnects?
Well, I mean, I think number one is the financial concern, because right now for an artist, usually the way you go about showing your work is you apply to be in the show, which means you have to make the work and then usually pay an application fee and then have your work juried in, and then you have to usually like this changes sort of by level. So like, at first when I just started out, then I was having to pay to ship it too. And just there was like, and sculpture is notoriously not easy to sell. So, there's like usually not a whole lot of return for all that work and money except for exposure, which, that does have value for sure. But, if I hadn't have also had a full-time job, it would have been a lot harder to get my work out there as consistently as I did. And so I think the financial thing is definitely something that I wish galleries and museums would pay more attention to.
Right.
And then of course the level of equity and inclusion that they're doing also. So, making sure that voices are being represented both on like in the gallery staff, on the jury, and then like within the show itself too, and then making sure that all artists have the resources they need to get their work there, you know, or yeah, so that's, you know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so I think those would kind of be the two biggest concerns that I have.
Yeah, and those are both very understandable things. Too, that I feel like anyone, if you expressed it, would go, oh yeah. But sometimes I feel like it's just a matter of someone who isn't on that side of it doesn't realize those are the concerns. Well, I mean, I guess I would hope someone would just say, oh yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from, but I'm sure that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, right? But I mean, the thing that I hear the most, which is so frustrating, is like, well, that's the way it's always been done,
No,
or
isn't
that's
that
like, welcome to the art world, and it's like, no, the art world is what we make it, right? So
right? And what you and I were talking about before we went live or whatever is one of the like interesting, fun, and sometimes frustrating things about the art world is there isn't a rule book.
right.
There's not a set list of policies and this is how it's done and here are the protocols and procedures. So
Right.
yeah, that reasoning, well, this is how it's always been done is not a good reason. I totally agree with you. And
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder if it's people give that reason because maybe they have so much on their plate. They're like, I don't have time to make up a whole new way for us, system for us to do these things. But I agree with you though. I think if you want to have time to have meaningful impact in the work and the artists that you're supporting, yeah, I think you're right. It's worth it.
Right. Like I think that there's always reasons not to do something, but you know, when things are a priority, somehow they always get done. And so really it's just a matter of making sure your priorities are in the right place, and that you're, you know, it's also just making sure that you're acknowledging the systematic issues.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. I think you're right on the money with that. Um, and I don't want to get too into this because you're in academia, but do you feel like there are areas in academia that you feel like are either, I guess, best and worst? What have you seen that you think this is so great? What have you seen that you think this could change?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like the pandemic has revealed a lot.
Yes.
Like it's been really showing the system's true colors. And so I initially was feeling really disheartened about academia by its response to the pandemic. And, you know, the reality is that schools have to make money in where we live. Like they have to, and they have to have students to pay those bills. Um and as a result, I just felt so disheartened about that priority, and that's where schools had like minds were, and you know, students weren't being protected. You know, like I just don't, all the science was saying, you know, don't put students in dorms, right? But also like the people who are on the front lines, like the security guards and the custodial services, and you know, all of those people are on the front line, and not, and you know, schools weren't giving them hazard pay, right? So so it's kind of like been disheartening to realize like how much of a business education is, because for me it's like so much about the learning, because for me that's the flip side, like, right, like what I love about education is just the beauty of like being in a space that's dedicated to growth and learning, and possibility, right? Like, all these incredible people come together at universities, these incredible thinkers, and there's just so much opportunity. So, it's like, I feel like it's kind of like the best of the best in terms of like ideal stuff. And then, just sort of like the most disheartening aspects of our society in other ways too.
Mm-hmm.
But the root of it is always like my heart is always right there with the students, and students amaze me. They just do. Like, from no matter how old they are, or like when I was teaching elementary and high school, and now the college students too, right? Like, I was telling my students, you guys kept me going in a lot of ways this semester. You chose art, and you chose to keep studying it with the world being the way it is. Like, you're choosing art right now, and that's really inspiring. So yeah, the students are by far the best part.
And I definitely can see that at a school like Georgia State. And I loved being there so much because I loved being in the environment of everyone's thinking about things that are not things if, you're going through, your 9 to 5. A lot of times you just don't have time to think about it because
Right.
you have concerns that are so immediate that
Yeah.
you don't always have time to do it. But I felt like it was this really wonderful time that was set aside in my life, and I was so lucky to be able to do that. And I was just like, this is great. Like, I wish I could just be paid to go to school. So Georgia State, if you want to pay me to take all your classes,
I'll be a professional student for you.
do it. I'm not going to leave my job at the Hudgens, but I can take a second job. Everyone has a second job.
Yeah.
And Georgia State in particular, I did feel like was really good about, at least in the classes with the professors I was with, was really good at presenting a bunch of different viewpoints.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, I left realizing how much I did not know. I have a lot to learn about everything.
Yeah, I definitely left school feeling the same way, but also feeling much more like I knew how to learn what I wanted to learn.
Yeah. Critical thinking. That's a helpful life skill.
It really is, isn't it?
What advice would you give to a young person, or just anybody wanting to go down a path that you've been going down?
That's a good question. Number one, you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
At the school where I used to work, one of my co-teachers, her name's Mary Ellen Carsley, she used to end the day telling her students, work hard, be kind, and make good choices. And I think that's like the best advice. Like, number one, anybody wanting to be in art or education for that matter, but especially art, you have to work, and there's just no way around it. You learn by doing, and you have to make, there's like some sort of really old saying, like, you have to make 100 bad pieces to make one good one or something. And as tired as those like adages or whatever get, there's truth in it. You really do have to make a lot of work to figure out what's good for you, at least. And so some of that skills, like in ceramics, you really can't get good at the pottery wheel without throwing a bunch of cups, right? But I think that it's also true for things that aren't ceramics, like when I'm putting different materials and objects together, like, it's taken me some pretty bad combinations to figure out which ones are the good ones and why. And that's something that I don't know unless I actually sit down and put the things together. I can't guess that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, number one, do the work. And then number two, be kind, right? Like, be kind to the people around you, right? Show an interest in them, and just, you know, be like, I think that so much of my success or progress, or like whatever you want to call it, has come from being surrounded by people who helped. Um, and you know, and that starts with my parents. My parents have always been very supportive. My husband, right, has always been very supportive. But then also like wider, when I started meeting people in the field and getting advice on like career moves, like, you know, the advice to come to grad school came from somebody who I was at a workshop with, and then, you know, he continued to check in on me and see how I was doing. And you know, other times people will be like, oh, hey, I think your work would be good for the show. Like, can you know, would you put a piece in the show, right? And so that be kind really is about like building and maintaining good and healthy connections.
Mhm.
And also like trying to make the world around you a better place, right? Like I recognize that I'm in a community, and so as I'm being lifted up, I also need to be lifting people.
Yeah.
And then yeah, make good choices. Like for me, that's about discernment and mindfulness and noticing things like, where is my time going? Like, what am I spending my time doing or looking at? Or you know, like even where am I heading? You know, what do I actually want for myself? Am I really being thoughtful about, you know, where I hope my future goes and working towards that? So yeah, that I think would be my advice. Work hard, be kind, make good choices.
That is really good advice. I need that crocheted into something.
Yeah, she would say, I would hear her saying it to her students as they walked out the door every morning. And it was like a little reminder for me too.
Yeah, that is, yeah, no, I think that's the best advice. So that's your superlative for Hudgens Talk.
Thanks.
Best advice. Kourtney Stone.
Thank you.
You've got quite a lot of support in the Facebook chat. Do you want to hear some of it?
I would love to. Yeah, I don't have any of my social media up, so I'm sorry if I'm missing. Should I be doing something?
What? No, you're doing everything.
Okay.
Hannah Newman just commented the emoji with the heart eyes. Ashley Lynch,
one of my fellow grads here at Georgia State, so.
Ashley Lynch, he's one of our members and he's great. He watches like every time. He said, "Go Panthers." Linda Stone said, "Yay, Kourtney." Is that any relation?
That's my mom. Hi, Mom.
Jamal Barber said, "I bet Kourtney was a great teacher."
Oh, Jamal. I mean, speaking of Atlanta artists, he's a rock star. So he's a printmaker in our program. But have you ever listened to his podcast, Studio Noise?
I haven't, but you know, when he commented that, I said to myself, like, this name sounds so familiar. I feel like I've seen his work and been like, whoa.
Oh yeah, he does really good work, and he's also got this really great podcast about Black artists, and he interviews them, and it's amazing.
And we give the name one more time for anyone who wants to.
Yeah, Jamal Barber is his name, and his podcast is Studio Noise, and it's Noise with a Z.
Noise. Cool. I'm gonna have to give that a listen. Christina Aracos Teruel. Christina, I'm really sorry. I didn't do your last name.
Teruel.
She said, "I love Kourtney." Bethany Graber said, "You're a badass." That was directed to you, I think. Maybe she meant it to me.
I love it.
And Hannah Newman said that she wants to hear more about the range of materials you use in your sculptures and what drives those choices.
Oh, Hannah, sure. So I use ceramics and found objects. So I do plenty of thrifting. And then I've also been using textiles. And usually, like, to me, it feels important that all the materials had a life before they got to me. So even the fabrics that I use and buy are used or secondhand. And then I've also been kiln casting glass elements sometimes, and also wax. And so the glass and the wax kind of came to me because I was interested in the levels of translucency that they have.
Mhm.
So, you have ceramic, which is like really, like, to me, it's very physically powerful. Like, people know ceramics are like, dirt is heavy, right? People know like what a ceramic mug feels like and the weight of that. And so, I think they can relate to that material. Um, but something like the glass, the way the glass I'm making is actually pretty heavy. But the way the light goes through it kind of has this like sort of psychological lightness, and I think the wax does too, because wax is, you can actually kind of see through it if it's thin enough. Um, so yeah, so a lot of those materials, and sometimes it's not quite right to use the exact object. Sometimes I need to make it out of a different material to talk about sort of the way our brains will, like the way our brains put memory together is actually, it's not like little files, it's like these networks, these constellations of pieces of information that are stored all over the place, and then when you remember something, they all get pulled back together. And so sometimes maybe your brain grabs a piece of information maybe from a different place, and so for me, like, making an object out of a different material sort of speaks to that mistranslation.
So where did you get the idea to go to thrift stores and things like that? Was this just something, if you were like, were you like a thrifter before and you were like, you know what, I'm looping this in?
So I've always been an object collector. I've always like just loved things. And so I think thrifting, like deciding to, so I've always liked thrift stores, but never really, I don't know, I didn't like collect quite as much.
Mhm.
I think including objects in my art gave me permission to be like a soft hoarder. And so I have like boxes of stuff now, and I have a reason, like when I go to the thrift store now, it's not just shopping, it's research. Which, I say that a little bit facetiously, but it's actually like, I really do think of it as research, because the things that I find in thrift stores in Atlanta are very different from the things I find in thrift stores in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And I think, yeah, and I think that that's a really interesting sort of material culture study.
That is really interesting. I could see that being a whole thing on its own.
Right? It probably could be.
What
I'm sure somebody has done something like that, but
what are people giving away where?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that is all the time we have, but thank you everyone for watching. But really, thank you, Kourtney, for talking to me and just letting me pick your brain.
Thank you so much, Kate. This was such a pleasure. And thanks to everybody for tuning in and listening and all the really nice comments and support. Like I said, I'm lucky to have this wonderful community. I couldn't do it without them all. So yeah, thanks, Kate.
All right, well, goodbye, Facebook. See you next time.